Welcome back to UK Property Info. Today I need to have a serious conversation with you about something that affects every single person living in this country. Whether you own your home, rent a property, or are still living with family while trying to save for your future, what I am about to share with you is critically important. The question I am asking today is stark and uncomfortable. Is the United Kingdom entering a housing emergency? After spending weeks analysing the latest government data, speaking with industry experts, and examining trends that are accelerating faster than anyone predicted, my conclusion is deeply troubling. The evidence overwhelmingly suggests that yes, we are not just approaching a housing emergency, we are already in one. And the figures I am about to show you prove it beyond any reasonable doubt. Let me start with the most recent data that prompted this video. Last week, official government statistics revealed that homelessness in England has reached its highest level since records began. Over 150,000 households are currently classified as homeless or living in temporary accommodation. That is not a typo. 150,000 households, representing hundreds of thousands of individual human beings, including over 130,000 children, are without a permanent place to call home. To put that in perspective, that is equivalent to the entire population of a city the size of Oxford, living in temporary accommodation, bed and breakfasts, hostels, or on the streets. And these numbers are increasing every single month with no sign of slowing down. But homelessness is just the most visible symptom of a much deeper crisis. Behind these headline figures lies a housing system that is failing at every level. The waiting list for social housing in England now exceeds 1.2 million households. That means over 1 million families are waiting for affordable housing that for many will never materialise. The average wait time in some London boroughs has stretched beyond 15 years. Imagine being told that you might get an affordable home when your newborn child is old enough to leave school. That is the reality facing families across this country right now. And the supply of new social housing has collapsed to levels not seen since the Second World War. The private rental market, which many see as the alternative to social housing, has become equally dysfunctional. Average rents across the UK have increased by over 30% in the past 3 years alone. In London, the average rent for a one-bedroom flat now exceeds £2,000 per month. Even in cities that were traditionally affordable, places like Manchester, Birmingham, and Leeds, rents have surged by 40% or more since 2021. The result is that millions of working people are now spending more than half their income just on keeping a roof over their heads. When you factor in energy bills, council tax, and basic living costs, there is simply nothing left at the end of the month for many households. For those hoping to escape the rental trap by buying their own home, the situation is equally bleak. The average house price in the UK now stands at nearly £300,000. That represents over 8 times the average annual salary, compared to just 4 times in the year 2000. First-time buyers now need an average deposit of over £60,000 just to get onto the property ladder. For a young person earning the median wage and trying to save while paying record high rents, accumulating that deposit could take over 20 years. An entire generation has effectively been locked out of home ownership, and the dream that their parents and grandparents took for granted has become a fantasy for millions of young people today. What makes this crisis particularly alarming is the speed at which conditions are deteriorating. When I look at the trajectory of these numbers, I see acceleration rather than stabilisation. House prices are not gradually becoming unaffordable. They are racing away from wages at an unprecedented pace. Rents are not slowly increasing. They are spiking by double-digit percentages year after year. Homelessness is not creeping upward. It is surging by tens of thousands annually. Every indicator suggests that we have passed the point of a housing shortage and entered territory that can only be described as an emergency. The question everyone asks is, how did we get here? The answer involves decades of policy failures, market distortions, and a fundamental mismatch between supply and demand that successive governments have failed to address. Let me walk you through the key factors that have created this perfect storm. The first and most fundamental issue is that we simply have not built enough homes. For decades, the UK has consistently failed to construct the number of properties needed to keep pace with population growth and household formation. Experts estimate that we need to build at least 300,000 new homes every year just to meet current demand. In practice, we have averaged around 200,000, creating a cumulative shortfall of millions of homes over the past few decades. The planning system bears significant responsibility for this failure. Obtaining permission to build in the UK is notoriously difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. Local opposition to new developments, often called NIMBYism, has blocked countless housing projects. Greenbelt restrictions, while well-intentioned, have constrained development around the cities where housing is most desperately needed. The result is a system that makes building homes slower and more expensive than almost any other developed country. Developers who want to build face years of delays and millions in costs before a single brick is laid. The second major factor is the decline of social housing construction. In the decades following the Second World War, local councils built hundreds of thousands of homes every year, providing affordable housing for working families across the country. At its peak in the 1950s, councils were building over 200,000 homes annually. Today, that number has collapsed to just a few thousand. The right to buy policy, introduced in the 1980s, allowed council tenants to purchase their homes at significant discounts. While this was popular with those who bought, it depleted the social housing stock without replacement. Over 2 million council homes were sold under right to buy, but fewer than 300,000 replacement homes were built. The net result was a massive reduction in affordable housing that we are still paying the price for today. The third factor is the financialization of housing. Property is no longer seen primarily as shelter. It has become an investment asset, a store of wealth, and a vehicle for speculation. Buy-to-let investors, both domestic and foreign, have purchased millions of properties, driving up prices and reducing availability for owner-occupiers. Property has outperformed almost every other asset class over the past 30 years, creating massive incentives for wealthy individuals and institutions to accumulate housing. Meanwhile, wages have stagnated in real terms, making it impossible for ordinary earners to compete with cash-rich investors bidding up property prices. The fourth factor is interest rates and mortgage availability. For years, ultra-low interest rates fueled a borrowing boom that pushed house prices ever higher. When rates finally started rising in 2022, mortgage affordability collapsed almost overnight. Someone who could borrow £300,000 when rates were 2% can now borrow barely £200,000 at current rates. This should theoretically reduce house prices, but the shortage of supply means that prices have remained stubbornly high even as transactions have fallen off a cliff. The result is a market that has frozen, with fewer sales, fewer listings, and millions trapped in properties they cannot afford to leave. The rental market crisis deserves particular attention because it affects so many people so directly. Over the past 5 years, the private rental sector has been transformed in ways that have made life significantly harder for tenants. The number of available rental properties has collapsed by over 40% in many areas, while the number of people needing to rent has continued to grow. When a rental property comes onto the market today, it typically receives dozens of applications within hours. Tenants are being forced to offer months of rent up front, bid above the asking price, and compete desperately for any available property. Those with imperfect credit histories, irregular income, or families with children find themselves at the back of an impossibly long queue. Why has rental supply fallen so dramatically? Multiple factors have combined to push landlords out of the market. Tax changes, particularly the removal of mortgage interest relief for buy-to-let investors, have significantly reduced profitability. Increased regulation, while often necessary to protect tenants, has added costs and complexity that many small landlords find overwhelming. Rising interest rates have made mortgages unaffordable for leveraged landlords who relied on low rates to make their investments work. And the prospect of further regulatory changes, including the proposed Renters Reform Bill, has created uncertainty that has prompted many landlords to sell up and exit the sector entirely. The properties being sold by exiting landlords are typically purchased by owner-occupiers rather than new landlords. This is good for those individuals who manage to buy, but it means a net reduction in rental housing stock. Every property that moves from the rental sector to owner-occupation is one less home available for the millions who cannot afford to buy. And with rental supply contracting, while demand continues to grow, the only possible outcome is the rent increases we have been witnessing. This is not greed on the part of remaining landlords, although some certainly push for maximum returns. It is basic economics. When demand massively exceeds supply, prices rise until enough people are priced out to restore balance. The human consequences of this emergency are devastating to witness. I have spoken with families who are spending over 70% of their income on rent, leaving almost nothing for food, clothing, or heating. I have heard from young professionals earning good salaries who have given up any hope of ever owning a home and are resigned to renting forever. I have met elderly people terrified of their landlords selling up because they know they would never find another affordable property at their age. I have encountered families with children who have been moved between temporary accommodations so many times that their children have attended 5 different schools in 3 years. These are not statistics, these are real people whose lives are being shaped and constrained by a housing system that has completely failed them. The regional dimension of this crisis is also important to understand. While London and the South East have long been unaffordable, the crisis has now spread to every corner of the United Kingdom. Cities in the Midlands and North that were once bastions of affordable housing have seen prices and rents surge beyond the reach of local incomes. Coastal towns popular with retirees and second home buyers have become impossible for young locals to afford. Even rural areas have been transformed by wealthy incomers willing to pay prices that bear no relation to local wages. The result is communities being hollowed out, with young people forced to leave the areas where they grew up because there is simply nowhere affordable for them to live. What can be done to address this emergency? The solutions are well understood, but they require political will that has been notably absent for decades. First and foremost, we need to dramatically increase housing supply. This means reforming the planning system to make building easier and faster. It means releasing more land for development, including potentially reviewing green belt boundaries around major cities. It means investing heavily in infrastructure so that new developments are properly connected to transport, schools, and healthcare. And it means ensuring that a significant proportion of new homes are genuinely affordable, not the pseudo-affordable housing that developers currently get away with. Second, we need a revival of social housing construction. The private market alone cannot solve this crisis because it will never build homes for those who cannot afford market prices. Local councils and housing associations need the funding and powers to build at scale once again. This requires government investment, access to land, and a long-term commitment that transcends electoral cycles. The homes built by our grandparents' generation provided security and stability for millions of families. We need that same ambition and commitment today. Third, we need to address the dysfunction in the private rental sector. This means creating conditions where landlords can operate sustainably while ensuring tenants have genuine security. It means finding the balance between regulation that protects tenants and conditions that keep landlords in the market. Currently, policy seems designed to drive landlords out without providing any alternative source of rental housing. The result is the worst of all worlds: fewer landlords, fewer properties, higher rents, and growing desperation among those who need to rent. Fourth, we need to cool the housing market as an investment vehicle. This might mean restrictions on second home ownership, higher taxes on properties left empty, or limits on foreign investment in residential property. If housing is to be affordable for ordinary people, it cannot simultaneously be the preferred investment for the wealthy. These policies would be politically difficult because they would affect property owners who vote in large numbers, but they may be necessary to rebalance a market that has tilted decisively against those trying to find a home. The political landscape offers limited hope for rapid change. Both major parties acknowledge the housing crisis in their rhetoric, but neither has demonstrated the radical approach needed to address it. Promises to build more homes have been made and broken repeatedly. Reforms to the planning system have been watered down in the face of opposition from existing homeowners. The fundamental conflict between the interests of property owners and those seeking affordable housing has been resolved in favour of owners every single time. Until this political calculation changes, meaningful progress will remain elusive. For those of you watching who are navigating this difficult landscape, I want to offer some practical thoughts. If you are currently renting, prioritise building your financial resilience. Save what you can, maintain good relationships with your landlord, and start planning early for any potential move. The rental market is brutal, and having notice and preparation time can make an enormous difference. If you are trying to buy, be realistic about what is achievable and consider areas or property types you might previously have overlooked. Shared ownership, help to buy, and other schemes can provide a route onto the ladder, even if imperfect. If you are a landlord considering your options, take time to understand the full picture before making decisions. The market is undoubtedly challenging, but selling in a rush could mean leaving value on the table. If you are thinking of entering the market as a landlord, do your calculations carefully, because the margins are much tighter than they were a decade ago. And if you are simply trying to understand what is happening to housing in this country, I hope this video has provided some clarity, even if the picture it reveals is deeply concerning. In conclusion, the evidence is overwhelming that the United Kingdom is experiencing a genuine housing emergency. Every metric, from homelessness to affordability to supply, points to a system in crisis. The causes are complex and have accumulated over decades, but the consequences are being felt right now by millions of people. Solving this crisis will require ambition, investment, and political courage that has been conspicuously absent from our national conversation. Until that changes, conditions will continue to deteriorate, and the dream of a secure and affordable home will slip further from the reach of ordinary people. Thank you for watching this important report from UK Property Info. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to the channel for more in-depth coverage of the UK housing market. Share this video with anyone you know who is affected by the housing crisis or who needs to understand what is really happening. Leave your thoughts and experiences in the comments below, because your stories help build a complete picture of conditions across the country. Together we can demand better from our politicians and work toward a housing system that serves the needs of everyone, not just those who already own property. Until next time, this is UK Property Info, helping you understand the housing market one video at a time.